Hey, today on HC Daily, we're going to be talking about the parable of the shrewd manager.
Yeah, all those rich people are just so shrewd.
Yeah.
Well, not just kidding. Not all of them, but this one is. And we're talking about that today on HC Daily.
You're listening to another episode of HC Daily, a daily devotional podcast that you can listen to at home or on the go. We believe that you can grow as much as you want to grow spiritually, and this podcast can be a part of your daily growth plan. So, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify or your favorite podcast app, we're glad you're here. Now, let's join our hosts, Jeff Forrester and Chris Zarbaugh, in the studio.
Hey, Wesley.
Hey, how are you?
Really good.
Yeah, do I look like Jeff is the question.
No, you're way more handsome than him. Are you kidding me?
No, it's good to be here. I got a question to kick things off,
Sure, go ahead.
Chris. If you could meet anyone on earth, who would it be?
Living or dead?
It's got to be living.
Ooh.
Any person on earth, who would it be? You could literally have a meeting with them, a sit down, take pictures with them. Any person on earth, who would it be?
Goodness gracious. Any person on earth. I am just...
Like, do you have a famous artist
I guess it depends on whether it's for pleasure or whether it's for, admiration or, like learning or things like that. So, there's a responsible answer that's admirable. Then there's like the silly answers, right?
Yeah. Well, give us both.
Yeah. So I would say, honestly, I'm just going to pick one because I don't feel like thinking and wasting time. So my very favorite country artist is Carrie Underwood.
Okay.
And I've seen enough interviews with Carrie to recognize that I think that like she and I are very similar in our likes and dislikes. And during interviews, I'm like, I can't believe that she likes all these different things.
Yeah.
And so I just think to myself, man, that would be a fun conversation. Mm-hmm. If you ever ran into somebody at a dinner party and we started talking, she'd be like, no way, you like all these things? Of course, then again, she wouldn't care.
Yeah.
I would care. She wouldn't care, right?
Just like, okay, get away from me.
No way, this total stranger likes the same things I like. I think she's great. I think I really admire her voice, blah, blah, blah. So there it is.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
I'll pick that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of great, more responsible answers I could have chosen, for sure.
That was a good one.
Yeah. Like which president and, which scholar and which theologian and all these kind of responsible answers.
See, I would have picked a Nobel Peace Prize winner who worked towards curing global famine.
That's me making the sound of throw up. So that's what I'm talking about. All right. Well, today we're talking about, my headline reads, Jesus tells the parable of the shrewd manager.
Yeah.
It's found in Luke 16. We're reading from the NLT version. We're going to read the first 15 verses. It says, Jesus told this story to his disciples. There was a certain rich man who had a manager handling his affairs. One day a report came in that his manager was wasting his employer's money. So the employer called him in and said, "What is this I hear about you? Get your report in order because you are going to be fired." The manager thought to himself, now what? My boss has fired me. I don't have the strength to dig ditches, and I'm too proud to beg. I know how to ensure that I'll have plenty of friends who will give me a home when I'm fired. So he invited each person who owed money to his employer to come and discuss the situation. He asked the first one, "How much do you owe him?" The man replied, "I owe him 800 gallons of olive oil." So the manager told him, "Take the bill and quickly change it to 400 gallons. "And how much do you owe my employer?" He asked the next man. "I owe him 1,000 bushels of wheat." Here was the reply. "Here," the manager said, "take the bill and change it to 800 bushels. The rich man had to admire the dishonest rascal for being so shrewd. And it is true that the children of this world are more shrewd in dealing with the world around them than are the children of light. So here's the lesson. Use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. Then, when your possessions are gone, they will welcome you into an eternal home. If you are faithful with little things, you will be faithful with large ones. But if you are dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. And if you are untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches of heaven? And if you are not faithful with other people's things, why should you be trusted with things of your own? No one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other, and you will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. And that's it, right? To verse 13?
Yeah, we can go through 15.
Okay. So the Pharisees, who loved dearly their money, heard all of this and scoffed at him. Then he said to him, "You like to appear to be righteous in public, but God knows your hearts. What this world honors is detestable in the sight of God."
Yeah.
Ooh, I was struggling reading there. It's really dim in here. So there it is, the parable of the shrewd manager. I think it's really interesting. He says the rich man had to admire the dishonest rascal for being so shrewd.
Yeah.
That's a turn, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, there's a lot in there.
Yeah, I want to go back to the very beginning because I think there's something important in this. Where in verse 1 it says, there was a certain rich man who had a manager handling his affairs. One day a report came that the manager was wasting his employer's money. Mm-hmm. I just want to stop right there for a second. How many of us work on jobs where we see waste and we don't do anything about it because, well, that's just not my responsibility.
Yeah,
That's just not my job. Yeah, it's not my money.
Yeah.
Oh, the company can stand to lose a few bucks and a big deal. They're a multi-million-dollar company.
Right.
Are you honest in your affairs at all times?
Right.
I think is the question
right.
that you need to ask. So that really jumped out to me. The manager was wasting his employer's money. Do we do that on a weekly basis at the jobs that we work at? Maybe you're working in an office right now. And you work in that office and you see certain things where you should probably speak up. You should probably say something. There's a more efficient way to do something. But yeah, that I see it, but that's that department. Right. Yeah, oftentimes we do that.
Oh, for sure. In fact, every employer wants the type of employee that is going to look out for, their own benefit.
Yeah.
Right? So to treat their company like they would if it were their own company.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the best kind of employee.
But here's the catch, Chris. What if you feel that the company is treating you bad?
Right. Then it's quote unquote justifiable.
Yeah, it just evened out.
Right.
Is how a lot of people. Yeah. Is it okay to do it?
Right.
Then?
Well, I'll be honest with you. So I used to work at a church because my whole adult life I've worked a couple different jobs. And by that I mean like 18 or 20 jobs.
Oh, wow.
Just bouncing around as a college student and things. But I've only worked for 4 churches, and so I'm not going to tell you which church it was. But I used to work for a church where they paid their employees very poorly.
Okay.
Like very, very ridiculously like little, and they somehow justified it and said, well, you're working for God, so therefore you don't. There's only 3 things required in life. There's food, shelter, and there's food, shelter, and clothing, right?
Yeah.
It's like this church said, pick 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
That's the way it was.
But I'm going to try that. The next time we get a DTE bill or Consumers Energy, I'm going to tell them that, hey, I'm working for the Lord, and I'm going to see if that flies.
Right. So anyway, all that to say, what ended up happening was so many staff members didn't tithe.
Yeah.
And somehow my bosses were like, I can't believe that these employees don't tithe. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, you've thrown them in a situation where they're just like, why would I tithe back to a church that's treating me poorly, right? And so, in other words, here's what I'm saying. Yeah. It doesn't just happen in companies. Mm-hmm. It happens even in churches.
Yeah.
Right? And we start to justify it. And so we're like, oh, we'll take more time off. We'll put in less time, or we'll put in the minimum effort because my company already treats me poorly, so therefore I'm going to milk or rob or get back, right?
Yeah.
Or we'll take a handful of pens and throw them in our purse.
Yeah.
Right. Or we'll take supplies, mm-hmm. and take a ream of paper home and throw it in our printer.
It's just one ream. I mean, who's going to miss one ream of paper? Yeah.
So, and it happens everywhere. Churches, secular places. But yeah, it's a really good point to understand that like integrity is a really big deal. In fact, mm-hmm. I think I was reading the notes in my, Life Application Bible?
Yeah.
And here's how it reads. It says, our integrity is often put to the line in money matters. God calls us to be honest, even in the small details that we could easily ignore. Heaven's riches are far more valuable than earthly wealth. But if we are not trustworthy with our money here, no matter how much or how little we have, we will be unfit to handle the vast riches of God's kingdom. See that you maintain your integrity in all matters, both big and small.
Yeah.
That's excellent, isn't it?
Yeah. And now that you mentioned that, I still want to deal with that at the beginning of this passage, but I want to jump down to verse 10. And it says, if you are faithful in little things, you will be faithful in large ones. But if you are dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. Here's a funny thing about that. I think of like a car, having a used car. It's dented up. It's got a lot of rust on it. Maybe the radio doesn't work. It still has the windows that you have to roll. For the young people listening, there actually was a time you had to use your arm to roll down the window. Right. That actually existed.
Yeah, it's amazing that it doesn't exist. Actually.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. But here's the thing. You have that car and then you treat it just like trash. But you're praying to God to give you a new car. But you're treating the thing that you have right now like trash. That doesn't compute. God is saying, if you're unfaithful with the small things, you'll be unfaithful with the new big things. So start taking care of the small thing, and then you'll have an appreciation and God will bless you with the bigger thing. I kind of think of when people, you know how the, what do they call that? The Mega Millions, the Powerball, what all those things where it's like.
Don't act like you don't know. You play that thing every week.
Where you get like millions and billions of dollars.
Right.
And you'll hear people say things like, you know, I don't give church, my church money now, but if I got $10 million, then I'm going to start helping the poor. I'm going to start if you're not helping the poor now, if you're not giving to your church now, you're not going to do it then. This is a note. I heard a preacher say this a long time ago. Money is just an amplifier. It amplifies what you already are. If you're a cheapskate with $1, you'll be just a bigger cheapskate with $10 million. It just amplifies what you already are. So the point is, have an appreciation and take care of the small things, and God will bless you with the bigger things.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the super serum that they gave to Captain America, the soldier serum.
Yeah.
It amplifies what you already are.
Yeah.
See that? I'm so relatable. So let me read a note in my, because I was looking at all the notes, obviously.
Yeah.
And there's another note that says this. Many explanations have been offered for this difficult story. The most likely is that the use of our money is a good test of our depth of our commitment to following Jesus. Here are at least three things. Number one, our money belongs to God, not us, and we must use our resources wisely. Number two, money can be used for good or evil. We must use ours for good. And then number three, money has a lot of power, and we must use it carefully and thoughtfully. When we live by God's kingdom promises, we will use our money and resources in a way that will grow our faith and our obedience, and to be an example to others. I think that it's interesting how that somehow Jesus ties our obedience or our responsibility to money, and he somehow weaves in our faith, because it really is.
Yeah.
Because he says, he who is faithful with a little will be given much. And when you think about it, if it's a kingdom principle, he's saying the same is true with money. We all know this.
Yeah.
We only give promotions to employees that are faithful with small things.
Yeah.
And then we give them responsibility over bigger things. And in the same way, you can sort of receive this parable both by God's blessings financially, and then also God's blessings in other ways, like spiritual responsibility, right? So in other words, like, how could I expect to be a pastor over thousands of people if I'm not a faithful pastor and effective and everything else over 10 people?
Yeah.
Right? Like, is God really going to let me and allow me in my career to have that sort of influence?
But I think people want to leapfrog.
Right. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Do.
So they hear what you're saying, but it's kind of like, yeah, but Chris, you don't know me. You don't know my heart. If God just gave me 100 people, I would be faithful then. I would serve them. No, you wouldn't.
Right.
You absolutely would not. If you're not doing that with the 10, you will 100% not do it with the 100.
Right. You know, it's so funny. We just had this conversation yesterday. I went out with a friend of mine, Bill Stewart, to lunch, and we were talking about the storm that had just passed through our town.
That was a crazy storm.
It was a crazy storm just a couple of days ago, right?
Yeah, broken trees and...
Yeah, well, he had a huge tree fall on his house.
Oh, wow.
And it didn't really destroy much of the house, but it's totally on the house. Like all the leaves and everything are totally covering the house.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how, will insurance pay for it, blah, blah, blah. And so I was telling him that a tornado had gone through my backyard back in 2006.
Oh, man.
And it went through our city. And I had a 70-foot cottonwood tree that fell. And by the way, cottonwood trees are from the devil, from hell itself. So I'm thankful that tree got uprooted and taken down. But I had to pay out of pocket to get. It was like $2,000.
Yeah.
To pay out of pocket to get that thing removed. And the thing is, when I called the insurance company, my homeowners, I said, "Is there any way that the homeowners can pay for this?" And on the other end, here's what she said to me. She goes, "Did it touch the house in any way?" And I said, "Well, no, it fell the opposite way." And she goes, "Listen to me. Did it even graze the house in any way?"
Yeah.
And what she's telling me is all you have to do is say yes, and the homeowners will pay for this.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, listen, it was toward the back of my yard.
Yeah.
It fell the opposite direction. It could not have fallen further
from the
my
house.
It was nowhere near my house. I couldn't even make up a leaf blew onto the roof.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't even do it because the wind was going the other way.
Yeah.
And so that thing almost hit the neighbor's house. And she goes, "Did it touch the house in any way?" And I'm on the phone, and I know that all I have to do is say yes. And I was like, "No, it didn't hit the house in any way. I can't justify. I can't say yes to this."
Yeah.
So I'm at it's a $2,000 moment there, right?
Yeah.
And I was and I don't know what my deductible was. It was minus my deductible. Maybe it was $1,000. I don't know. But either way, that's an expensive answer, right?
Yeah.
And so Bill says, he goes, "You know what?" He quoted this scripture. He goes, "If you're faithful in the little things and you have integrity in private, and it's only the things that God sees," he says, "God will reward you later on down the road."
Yeah.
And it is true because, we know that God sees all things. Mm-hmm. Jesus tells us when we go into the closet and pray, don't stand on the street corners like the Pharisees do. They want to be seen for their righteousness. He says, go into your closet, be private when you pray because your heavenly Father sees everything and he knows. Yeah. And he knows our quiet moments of integrity. He knows our honest choices. And he knows that when we're honoring our employer or whether we're dishonoring our employer in private.
Yeah.
And it matters.
But Chris, here's the funny part to me in verse 3. It says, the manager thought to himself, this is after he was fired. The manager thought to himself, now what? My boss has fired me. Mm-hmm. He's shocked that he was fired by the company, which is, I think, absolutely hilarious. You were not operating with integrity. You were doing the bare minimum, and now you are utterly shocked and baffled that the company let you go. I just think that's hilarious to me right there.
Yeah. Well, the point of the story, I believe, is verse 10, and we've already talked about it already.
Yeah.
But if we're faithful in little things, you'll be faithful in larger ones. But if we're dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. It is the same principle of the parable of the talents.
Yeah.
If you're faithful with the little things, you're given more. And it's also the principle of, you are who you are, regardless of what amount. It doesn't matter how many zeros at the end of your paycheck. You're going to be the person you are, and you got to choose to be faithful in any age, any stage.
Yeah.
So I would just say for our listeners who are listening, if you're praying for great things, just be faithful in the things that you have now. And beyond that, for our faith, it's the same thing with our faith. If we're praying about a relationship, if we're praying about, responsibility in our job, if we're praying about influence in our neighborhood or whatever it is, just be faithful in what you have now. Show integrity. And if you engage in that way, then good things always come to those who can be trusted.
Yeah, and I would even toss this in, Chris, even when you feel like it's a waste of time. Even when you feel like having integrity, doing the right thing is a waste of time. Why am I doing this? Kind of the car example. I'm giving this car a wash. It's got more spots and rust on it than anything. Keep doing the right thing and God will bless you.
Well, I think that's a great place to end.
Yeah.
And so we will see you next time on HC Daily.
Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this podcast, please help us spread the word by liking this episode and sharing it on your social media platforms. Be sure to leave a comment and review, and don't forget to give us 5 stars. When you do, you help us reach even more people who need a daily devotional like HC Daily. If you'd like to hear more from Chris and Jeff, they're both teaching pastors at Heritage Church, located in Southeast Michigan. You can get more of their messages by clicking on the Messages tab at heritagechurch.com. Be sure to join us again soon for another episode of HC Daily.